I think it's really hard. People that are in sales or people that are thinking about starting a company, even, I see this a lot. Like, they get so excited about like how cool their company is going to be, but they fail to launch because like they're so scared that it might not work, and they like the idea so much that they don't want to lose it. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing, and I think the abundance mentality really helps. If you can embrace it and you can live it and you can believe it, helps a lot of people get over that initial fear of acting.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Matt Rodak, who is going to share about building an abundant mindset. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life, to wake up energized, excited about the day, to have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want, to be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes from Alan Watts. The meaning of life is just to be alive. It's so plain and obvious and so simple. And yet, everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. I always say life is simple, but we make it complicated. And I think that was a perfect quote for this time of year, because I'm on a 2-week shutdown of just being alive and letting things be and getting rid of the rush of hustle and bustle that normally everyone is doing. I'm currently reading The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey, and he makes an important point. Lack of trust causes a massive loss of money, both in business and personally. When we don't trust the people, we have to expend a lot more money and energy to make things happen. Plus, it causes so much brain chatter. Think about it. When you trust your kids, life is simple. But if you don't, then how much time and thought does that eat up? And that's just your kids. You can multiply that 10x at work. So the question is, what are you doing to build trust? And do your actions sometimes break trust? Are you the solution or the problem to this? Interesting question and a great book. I suggest you check it out if you'd like to learn more about trust and how it affects the bottom line. Today's guest is Matt Rodak. He's the founder and CEO of Fund That Flip. He started the company in 2014, which provides fast, reliable capital to real estate investors while also enabling accredited investors to passively invest in highly curated loans. Matt has since led the company to be listed 2 consecutive years on Inc. magazine's fastest growing private companies, number 17 on Financial Times' fastest growing companies. He's been recognized as an industry thought leader for the MReport, listed as the founder to watch in the Startup Weekly, and recently named as top 50 financial technology CEO by the Financial Technology Report. Fund the Flip is headquartered in New York City with an office in Cleveland, Ohio. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Matt Rodak. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Rocky.
I'm excited to learn from you, but we always start at the beginning. So what was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
At an early age, my mom put us on a token system almost, right? So instead of getting necessarily an allowance every week, it was something that like we got a certain amount. She used poker chips, right? So if we made our bed, we got a certain number of poker chips. If we cleaned our room, if we did the dishes, if we took out the trash, and those poker chips could be cashed in, at the end of the week or the end of the month for some type of a prize. So this started at kind of an early age. Eventually, right, I connected the dots that, there's a real thing in the real world that like also allows you to, right, accumulate, poker chips, and it's green and it's got paper and you can cash it in for like much cooler stuff than it was under my mom's bed, right, with the poker chip box. It was interesting, right? There was this remote control car that I wanted to buy, and my mom was like, yeah, like you can buy it. It was $85 or $65 or whatever it was. She's like, but you got to use your own money. And I was like, well, I don't have that kind of money. And she's like, well, you can start doing your own laundry, and I'll pay you instead of with poker chips with money, and you can save up some money and buy this car. So it was a kind of a cool trick that she pulled on me, because I saved up enough money, I bought the car, but then she was like, well, now you know how to do your own laundry. So like you're doing your own laundry and you're not getting paid for it anymore, which turned out to be a kind of actually a good skill by the time I got to college, right? Because like no one else in the dorm knew how to like do their laundry, and like I've been doing it since I was 7, right? So, my parents, I think, in their own way, kind of backed into, one, I think, teaching us about money, but also teaching us about, it's not free, right? Like it just doesn't grow literally on the tree, right? You hear this, a lot of parents, I think, talk about like, the money tree and like where does it come? But like they challenge us to actually understand that, there's a direct correlation between work, effort, value creation, right? And being compensated for that. And I think that really helped me even with my entrepreneurial kind of mindset. And, I went on from doing my own laundry to getting paid to cutting neighbors' grass to that turning into a landscaping business that I hired my friends to work, and, putting what I didn't realize, right, but like I'm putting a P&L together and a balance sheet together. And like I had to learn kind of how to like run my landscaping business finance when I was 16 years old. And I'll never forget, I got to, my first accounting class in college, and the professor's talking about a P&L and accounts receivables and accounts payables. And like, I didn't know that's what those things were called, but I was like, oh, like I've got accounts receivables in my landscaping business, right? Like those are all my invoices that like I'm waiting to like collect, right? And like, oh, like I've got accounts payable. Like, these are my friends that I owe money to, right? So like it all kind of clicked for me. Like then when I did get into, I guess not high school, but like college, right? Of like, oh, there's a whole science behind money. And like, that's super interesting to me, right? Because like I've been playing with it my whole life, but like now there's a framework, there's science, there's, ledgers, right? There's P&Ls, there's cash flow statements, there's all these things that like actually help you, rather than try to keep it in your head of like, who do I owe and who owes me money? And like, right, like there's a system for that. That's cool, right? So really long-winded answer to your question, but that's been a little bit of my money journey.
No, and that's perfectly cool. And I've never heard of parents who use the token system. A lot of people have allowances or they pay their kids to do stuff. And so that's an interesting twist on that. And of course, as you said, it teaches you how to work and how to earn. And it also, you learn life skills because you have to learn how to do laundry and other types of things. And I think that's where parents these days aren't teaching their kids life skills. When kids get to college, they don't know how to do anything, and it makes it much more difficult. And this year is probably serious issues because they're all kind of stuck. Yeah. I don't know how they're surviving. Hopefully they figure it out, right? You always do. See, you mentioned the science behind money, and I guess you meant more the terminology of using all of those different financial reports. I know most business owners really struggle with that part of it. What have you found in your experience?
I mean, I think the thing that I've always liked about math, right, to some extent, right, the finances of a company are in some ways just another application of math, is like the numbers never really lie to you. right? So like there's a lot of like subjectivity around like, oh, how's our marketing campaigns doing? How are our sales team doing? How's this other part of the business doing? The numbers tell this beautiful story around like how all of those things are doing, right? If you know how to read them. I think the other thing that it's super helpful for someone that's building a rapidly scaling business is understanding not just the historical numbers, but also understanding how those historical numbers inform potential future numbers, right? And what are the levers in your business that are going to get you the biggest bang for your buck, right, on where you want to make investment, right? So like, not to get too much into what our business is, but like we're a lender, right? We lend money to people that are investing in real estate. And a really big leverage point in our business is cost of capital, right? So if I can lower my cost of capital by 25 basis points, right? So a quarter of 1%, right? On $100 million of loans, like that's a lot of like net margin that like goes directly to the bottom line of the business. So a relatively small percentage tweak, right, of like 0.25%, right, on a cost of capital applied on a very large amount of assets results in a huge result, right, relative to like, oh, let's dial this marketing thing in, or let's, over optimize on how much we pay our people. It's like, no, like where the business strategically should be spending a lot of focus, because we understand the numbers, is this cost of capital piece, right, or this lifetime value, like how many loans does every borrower take from us, right? And if it's 10 versus 3, then like there's a huge difference in like the profitability of that customer. So like, how does that inform our marketing team on like who's the best customer to go actually and get, and our sales team, who's the best customer to go get, right? So like the numbers, one, don't lie from a historical perspective, but they also really help you form strategy on like, which dial should we actually be turning? Because we can't turn them all, right? Like we can't focus on turning all of them. And a really good understanding of the numbers help provide some clarity on which ones hopefully are going to get you the most bang for your buck, if you will.
That's a super skill, because most people can't figure that out. They don't even take the time to think about and it doesn't matter whether it's business or personal. Right. Because in our personal life, we have levers, too. How much are we going to spend on a house and a car and on certain things? So these levers, these principles they apply to everything. But most people never take the time to understand their levers and go through and figure it out. How did you learn how to do that?
Yeah, I don't know if maybe it was, fun for me, right, as a kid. Like I was also the kid who liked Monopoly, right, and counting the money and understanding, that maybe that's another lesson, right, of like how I learned about money, right, the Monopoly money. But I've always just generally enjoyed algebra and spreadsheets and, right, like the math of things. And so I think part of it is, personal enjoyment. The other part of it is like I kind of had to, right. I had this landscaping company that I accidentally started, and then I had to pay people, and I had to collect invoices, and I was like, like I got to understand actually how this stuff works, right? So I had a real world applicability. Like I needed to do it so I could have money to go to the movies with my girlfriend in high school, right? So like I had to figure out how to get paid. I wasn't just collecting a check, because from working for somebody. So like kind of had to, and then because I had that real world experience in high school, by the time I got to college, right, like I had this like really interesting kind of perspective on like, oh, like it wasn't just learning about AR and AP, and right, I was like, oh, like this is a real thing that I've seen work before and how it can work for me. I think the other thing is like a lot of people are told they're like no good at math, or math is boring, or right, like they learn early that math is hard. And math was never hard for me, right? But I think that's part of it too, is like my wife's like this. Like she's kind of one of those people that's like, she doesn't think she's good at math, right? And she doesn't like to look at her finances because of that, right? And it's like, those two things are very separate, right? And I think people just generally associate numbers with math, and they remember being embarrassed in second grade because they lost the flashcard exercise or whatever. So like they don't want to deal with it, right? I don't know.
We'll dig more into mindset and numbers momentarily. And to be honest, most of these business numbers are literally second grade math. These are not, you don't need algebra to figure this stuff out.
Addition and subtraction, usually.
Yeah, it's usually addition, subtraction, and multiplication. So what happened after college? What was next?
Yeah, so I really wanted to get into some type of real estate development and work, and the landscaping business had led me to be around a lot of house flippers and real estate investors. I ended up doing a lot of work for those guys, and thought that was a really cool way to work with your hands and be a business person and be somewhat independent and entrepreneurial, and also give back in ways to improving communities. So I graduated college with a finance degree in 2007. So not a ton of real estate development opportunities circa 2007, or anything financial services for that matter. So I went and worked for a large commercial property insurance company, a Fortune 500 company that did very large scale property insurance products. They insured Fortune 500 companies themselves. I spent the better part of 7 years with that company. It was a great company. I'd like to say that I developed my entrepreneur skills as an intrapreneur, right, within a very large organization, and helped grow a smaller organization and a bigger organization to be a bigger part of that company, right? So spent 7 years doing a number of jobs, everything from business development and underwriting as kind of an individual contributor, to rose through the ranks and ran the sales and marketing department for one of the middle market groups. So finance guy running sales and marketing because of numbers, right? We got to learn a lot about, implementing systems and building technology and training people and breaking sales processes down into very small pieces and helping people understand how to be more effective at business development efforts. So did that for 7 years, and that's kind of where Fund That Flip, which I've been also doing now about almost 7 years, kind of was incubated around this idea of, one, I wanted to get out of my corporate life, right, and do something more entrepreneurial. As I mentioned, I was kind of always the kid early doing entrepreneurial stuff. And also want to get back to my real estate passion. So learned of kind of the house flipping game, and learned of private money lending and hard money lending as part of that journey, and saw an opportunity, I thought, right, to institutionalize this idea of hard money lending or private money lending, bring technology to it, bring different distribution, bring large data, and ultimately, right, the goal is to try to create a better experience for people that were looking to scale their real estate investment businesses and needed a reliable source of capital to do that. At the same time, saw an opportunity as a passive investor myself, right? I was doing some alternative investing in peer-to-peer loans at the time on Prosper and Lending Club, and thought, man, it'd be really cool if I could do something similar to this, but instead of investing in unsecured consumer loans, invest in an asset-backed loan like a real estate project. And that was kind of the idea of Fund That Flip. And a big believer in your timing has to be right? So like this idea is coming together while new legislation is being passed. It's changing securities laws, right, to make all of this a lot more doable. So I'm giving you another long-winded answer, but it was kind of like, entrepreneurship, college, corporate world, entrepreneurship, or really around this idea of marrying a lot of my passions around real estate, technology, alternative investing.
And that's cool. You knew what you wanted, and you took the steps to go get it. And I think a lot of that comes back to, we kind of touched on it earlier, is mindsets. And I know you are a big fan of abundance mindsets. Can you share what your take is on that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me about the biggest thing that the abundance mindset does in terms of like freeing you is it allows you to move quicker to what I'll say is like shooting your shot, right? So like, let's say if you're in a business development role and you really are excited about this new client, like you can run hard into trying that to win that new client, because if you fail, your abundance mindset says like, it doesn't matter if I don't get this business, because like there's another one right behind him, right, lined up that's going to be for me, right? So what I see, and I still struggle with this, is people get really tied into this ideal of like, I can't wait to sign up that new client, or I can't wait to get the date with that, that new person, or I can't wait to raise this money from this awesome investor if I'm a startup world. And they get so attached to this idea of what their life will be like if that goes well, that they're afraid to let go of the idea and action against it, because if they action against it, it doesn't work out the way that they want it to work out, then like they lose that kind of like that fantasy land that they painted for themselves, right? So like that's a real thing where like people are afraid to act against something that they want because they're afraid they won't get it. And then the idea of it, the idea of itself is almost more appealing than actually having it, right? And they don't want to lose that idea of having it, if that makes sense, right? So they don't action against it because they don't get told no. And if they don't get told no, it's still a possibility, right? So like for me, that abundance mentality, what that changes is, whether it's that person that you want to date or that business relationship that you want to develop or that investor you want to sign up, you're not afraid to go after it, because if you do get a no, you truly, truly believe in your heart of hearts, there's another one right behind it, right? So like when we were raising money for Fund That Flip, it's a punch in the mouth kind of exercise to raise money, because you get no 99 times until you get the one yes. And the only way you can get through that exercise really is you have to be willing to shoot the shot 99 times before, you swish it on the 100th, right? And I think it's really hard. People that are in sales or people that are thinking about starting a company, even, I see this a lot. Like they get so excited about like how cool their company is going to be, but they fail to launch because like they're so scared that it might not work, and they like the idea so much that they don't want to lose it. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing, and I think the abundance mentality really helps. If you can embrace it and you can live it and you can believe it, it helps a lot of people get over that initial fear of acting.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So one of the things that I've heard, and we're going to be talking about this on an upcoming episode, is the world is changing faster and faster. And so being very clear on what you want is important, but letting go of how you get there and the process to achieve it. Like if you're certain on how you're going to achieve this, the chances of getting punched in the mouth and having no's and all of those things, you have to let go of that and just understand that as long as you know where you're going and you keep taking action steps towards it and you don't give up, you will achieve it over time. But don't be married that it has to be this way, because more often than not, you're going to be disappointed. And I think that's essentially what you're saying.
I think that's 100% right? Like we use a framework in our company called OKRs, right? Which is an acronym for objectives and key results, right? So like the idea is, the objective is, what is the big thing that you want to accomplish, right? So it could be for a football team, right? Like we want to win the Super Bowl, right? That's the objective, right? And like the key results are like, how do you know that you're on your way to winning the Super Bowl, right? What the objectives and key results don't do is describe how you're going to win the Super Bowl, right? It doesn't talk about signing a marquee quarterback or running a 4-3 defense versus a 3-4 defense, right? It's not prescriptive in the how, but it's very crystal clear around what do we want and how do we define if we got what we wanted, right? What are the targets that we want to hit? And what that does is it creates this massive amount of flexibility for you to ebb and flow in strategy, to take what the market gives you, to play off your strengths that you have, to minimize the weaknesses that you have. The market changes. Like now it's like we were going to run a 4-3 defense, but our best defensive end broke his leg, right? We don't have a good backup. So but we've got a bunch of really good, and I'm sorry if I'm using football references, but we've got a bunch of really good linebackers. So let's switch to a 3-4 now, right? So otherwise you're like, oh, we can never win the Super Bowl now because our best player on defense got hurt. Well, it's like, well, yes, but what can we do to change? And our objective doesn't change, right? We still want to win the Super Bowl. So I think having some frameworks around that not getting too prescriptive on the how, taking really what the market gives you.
And I think it's important especially these days, to be flexible, right? Because you don't know what is going to happen in the world, and you just have to kind of go with the flow. And that kind of brings up one of the points that I've heard you say is not to focus so much on the destination, but to enjoy the journey. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is something I struggle with, right? Like there's, I think people are generally motivated, I think, by like three things, right? You're either motivated by like power, achievement, or affiliation, right? It's kind of like what they say, right? Like you're really, being in charge is important, or like checking, your goals off is important, or like being around people, right, is important, and none of them are right or wrong. But I'm an achievement guy, right? Like I like to know that I'm achieving goals and moving things forward. And the struggle with that is, you're never done, right, until the lights go out, right? For you personally, right? Until the lights go out, you're never done achieving, or you're never done, right? And like that can leave people incredibly unsatisfied. I've been through this, right? Of, you feel like you're on this hamster wheel constantly. And I think part of the thing that I've learned, and it's been one of the biggest values that I've gotten out of starting my own company, is really forcing me to focus on the process rather than the destination, right? So who are the people that have come into my life because of this company and the friendships that have been developed, and right, how has that enriched my life more so than hitting the next revenue milestone or hitting the next growth milestone, right? And taking stock in that, right? And taking stock in the relationships and the learnings and the screw ups, right? And everything in between that ultimately, is a big part of the human experience. And sometimes I think we get too focused on the scoreboard, right? How much money is in my bank account, or some of these other things, as opposed to how enriched do I feel in life through this process that I'm going through, right?
And that's true. Happiness is not an event, right? It doesn't happen when you achieve X. Yeah. You've got to be happy on the journey, or you're not going to be happy when you get there. All money does is amplify your underlying behaviors and worries and the good and the bad. And so you got to fix those on the journey. Otherwise, you're going to get somewhere and find out this isn't what I dreamed it was supposed to be. And I know, because I went through that myself. So, some people do it smarter and faster, and other people take a little bit longer. So you're funding flips, you're involved in the real estate marketplace. What are you seeing going on? Because I'm hearing all kinds of stories. People are fleeing the cities. People are bidding up houses like crazy. The whole world seems to be a little bit nutty in real estate right now.
I'll tell you, Rocky, I can't make heads or tails about it, completely. I mean, we're primarily focused on the, 1 to 4 family market. So single family to kind of, fourplexes, with most of that being true single family housing. And it's been red hot in most markets, right? So you've got, we are seeing a lot of the, call it the suburban markets, be in much higher demand than they were a couple of years ago, right? As people are fleeing the higher, density, higher populated city centers, and looking for that backyard and some more space and the extra bedroom for the work from home. And, so that's interesting. I mean, I think the biggest problem that, I don't know if it's a problem, but the biggest thing that people maybe misunderstand about the real estate market is everyone suffers a little bit from recency bias, right? Of like 2008, economic crisis, real estate got smoked, next recession, real estate's going to get smoked. And like, it's usually not the case, right? If you look back over the past 60 years, we've 6 recessions, we're in 7 now. Real estate has gone down into, it's gone up into, and it stayed flat into, right? Now we're in the 7th one where real estate's going up, right? So there's not a ton of correlation between, I'm talking specifically residential real estate and recessions. There's a lot of other, moving parts, interest rates, supply demand fundamentals, population growth, job growth, wage growth, who's losing jobs and who's gaining jobs, right? So it's not quite as simple as the economy, the housing goes as the economy goes. I do think there's going to be some real pain in the New York cities where I'm at, and the San Franciscos, and particularly in the, apartment, retail, condo business. for a couple of years. And I think the other thing that's interesting is there's no such thing as a national real estate market, right? So like there was a national real estate market in 2008 because like it was so systemic, right, with what was going on there. But I think what you're going to see this time around is a lot more winner. There's going to be a winners and there's going to be a losers column, right, in terms of asset class, geo, how people have capitalized their assets, et cetera. It's going to be not as binary as it was, I think, in 2008.
And I think that's very true. Early on, I think what we're seeing is skyrocketing prices because interest rates dropped so much. And so that what I'm hearing is people's payment have stayed the same, but the price they paid for the house was a lot more because of the change in the interest rates. And then the other problem is there's just not a lot of houses on the market. And so it causes people to bid it up. And then on top of that, it's hard to start new construction because the costs of the inputs have skyrocketed and there's supply chain issues with it as well. So all of these things are coming together. At the same point, though, I don't think we've seen the economic hardships yet at the higher end of the income curve. So I think as we're continuing on, now we're starting to see some of the higher income jobs start to be in jeopardy. And so I think real estate, even in 2008, it took quite a while from the peak of the market to the bottom of the market. It was much more of a lagging indicator. So there may be more turmoil a couple more years down the road as some of those people go through a long foreclosure process. Right now, I think all of the foreclosures went during the shutdown part. Everything literally came to a halt. And so once that grinds back up, you may see more waves. But we don't know where we're going to end up, do we? We can't predict the future. We can only react to what we're seeing and take a best guess.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, this is another reason that understanding numbers is something that any business person should take some time to develop that skill, right? Because like to your point, Rocky, there's a bunch of people in forbearance right now, and like what percentage of those people come out of forbearance into back current versus relative to going into the kind of the foreclosure process. But even if you segment that data out further, right, those people that are in forbearance and even in foreclosure still have a lot of equity in their homes, which is different than what we saw in 2008 because of the way that loans were structured back then, right? So, if I'm a person that's 6 months behind on my mortgage and I'm about to lose it to foreclosure, but I've got $60,000 of equity in that home, I'm not letting that property go to foreclosure. So what's going to happen? An investor is going to come along, right, and offer me $30,000 of my equity, right, and like I'm going to end up selling that property to either via short sale or through to someone else, right, that has contacted me through a direct letter campaign or whatever, right? So like as a real estate investor, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for true win-win situations for homeowners that are unfortunately in a difficult position but have managed their finances well up to this point and have built equity in their homes, and investors that can come in with the appropriate amount of liquidity and help that person not totally lose all of the piggy bank that they've built up over the years.
And it's true. In some markets, they might actually walk away with more because prices have skyrocketed. So, but you've got to take action. You can't just sit there and put your head in the sand. You've got to say, hey, we're in a tough situation. Are we going to be able to get out of this? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, then you know what? If you've got equity, go find a way to get out of the opportunity and sell your house. And you can even go into the marketplace and sell your house. With today's hot market, it's doable. And then the bank will take its cut, and it is what it is. It's tough situations. Real
estate is such an emotional business, right? Whether it's your personal residence or you're investing in real estate, because it's such a very real thing. And there's a bit of, craftsmanship, right, that goes in this, and love, right? Even if it's just an investment property, people pick the colors and it feels like it's so emotional. And as business people, and this is why I can be in this business, is like, if it doesn't make sense on the spreadsheet, like I'm emotional about the spreadsheet. I'm not emotional about the paint, the paint colors, right? Right. So like, it's a hard thing. And like we see people sell their homes to some of our investors, and it's like, why did they do that, right? And the reason was it's Rocky is because they had their head in the sand for too long and they ran out of time. And if they would have pulled their head out of the sand and had some conversations and talked to some people and been proactive about it, they could have come to a much better situation. So it's a real thing, I guess, with people not wanting to talk money to their own detriment.
Money mindsets are a messed up thing. It's a very, very real thing. And because we do real estate, yeah, my emotion, like I've removed all emotion from our real estate transactions. It's like, hey, does this make sense? As you said, do the numbers work? And if they do, great. If they don't, we're out.
Abundance mentality. There's another one right behind it. Go buy the next one, right?
There will always be another deal. And if there aren't, we'll wait until the home runs show up. I'm not going to do something just for the sake of doing it. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
I mean, I think it's one of the things that I like to talk about in the company is assuming positive intent, right? So like, you're interacting with people all the time and it's very easy to think that, this person's trying to pull one over on me or they're doing me wrong or like, why is this person not call me back or, right? And I think just this idea of like, assume positive intent. Assume that when Rocky asked me that question, that was kind of a jerk question. He didn't mean it that way. I'm not saying you did, by the way, but like, right? Like you're here so I can talk to you about it, right? Like assume that like maybe he had a bad day. Maybe he missed his breakfast. Maybe, right, something else. And his question or his comment or his actions are coming from a place that are truly good for me and him in our relationship, right? So I think where a lot of people get into their own heads is they get all upset about something that happened that wasn't a thing, right? And it could have just purely been solved by assuming positive intent from the other side and then having a conversation at some point around like, hey, like this thing happened and here's how it made me feel. And, what did you mean by it? And like, can we work on this together, right? So I think that's a big one for me is just always said another way, right? Give people the benefit of the doubt, right? That they're not trying to do harm.
And that's not easy to do. I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's very hard to let go of the emotions and just let it be. Yeah. And too often we make up our own noise in our head with that. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
No one's paying attention.
It's true, right? We all that's especially true. You go to the gym and you're afraid everyone's looking at you and it's like, nobody's looking at you. They're doing their own thing. They got their own headsets on. They're worried about their own stuff.
Everyone's so wrapped up in themselves. They're not paying any attention to what you are doing, your mistakes you've made, the fact that you've got ugly clothes on or what, like no one's paying attention to you. So like live your life, right? Like do what makes you happy and care less about other people's opinions of you because guess what? They don't have an opinion of you because they're not paying attention to you.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Value how you spend your time more than how much money you make for the next 10 years of your life. Work for free or for cheap if it means you're going to gain valuable experience that you can leverage later in your life into infinitely more capital, if you will, right? So, take the low-paying job with the really smart entrepreneur or take the low-paying job with the real estate operator or whatever your passion is, right? Trade your time for money while you don't have any really big boy or big girl expenses, right, or obligations.
And that's very true. I was just lecturing at the local university on entrepreneurship. And what I told them is spend your 20s figuring out what you truly want in life, what you love, and get paid to learn. Go find opportunities that will teach you the lessons that you want to learn and be smart enough to at least get paid for it rather than spending money trying to do all of that.
You can make a lot of money in a Wall Street job here in New York City and be miserable and learn nothing, right? Or you can make less money and learn a ton and go to leverage at it. The other thing maybe I'll add is travel. This is, I grew up in a small town in Ohio and you can see behind me, I've got a picture of Jordan in Africa, or is it Brazil, in Machu Picchu, right? And like getting to these other cultures has changed my world in terms of, empathy, right? And what's right and what's wrong, and what actually do you need in life to be happy, right? Do you need that new iPad? Because like I just met this dude out in in Africa who doesn't know what an iPad is, and like that's the happiest dude I've ever met in my life, right? So like just travel and see different cultures and learn from different ways to live, and I guess part of that, bringing appreciation to the journey, right, and finding happiness in life.
And that is very true. If people would like to find you, connect, learn more about what you do, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so check our website out at fundthatflip.com. I can also be reached at matt@fundthatflip.com. We've got a lot of great content on all things real estate investing there. Also be links then out to our Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and all that good stuff. I'm also on LinkedIn, Matt Rodak. I think I'm one of the only Matt Rodaks on LinkedIn, which is still kind of a cool thing to be able to say. So you can find me there too, and would love to connect.
Cool. And I will put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Rocky. This is great.
So the question I have for you is, are you creating an abundant mindset? You notice how small amounts over decades make a big difference? And showing up and taking tiny steps compounds. It's the same in our personal lives as it is in our business lives. Next week, we have on Kevin Chittenden, who's going to share how to build wealth through owning your home. Again, the theme is little bits of wealth created over time. If you haven't looked into refinancing your home, you may want to check it out and see what current rates are. We've never seen such low rates in history, and it can save you a lot over the life of your loan. I'm always amazed at people not refining their loans and paying high interest rates because they can't get the paperwork done. I'm enjoying the holiday season and shutting down, taking time to plan. I hope you're also having a restful time of year and have learned to step away from the hustle and bustle and just enjoy. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.